never thought that I would be saying this living in a cold, snowy climate like Maine, but I am beginning to suspect the greatest threat to our homestead might be drought. So according to Maine.gov and climate experts, Maine is projected to experience more short-term drought conditions as time goes on, with extreme drought conditions to become the new norm as early as 2050. Now you might think, okay, short-term drought, that's no big deal, I can weather that. Now imagine those 1 to 3 months are during your peak growing season. So for us, that is late May to late July in Maine, which already has an extremely short growing season. A drought during those peak growing months can stunt plants so that they never really get taking off. And the longer that drought continues, it makes your existing plants that are established more susceptible to pests and diseases. And it only takes one day that you forget to water, and you can lose a whole season's worth of progress and produce. So we have well water, and our garden is about half an acre. I think aspirationally we're aiming for maybe an acre. But like I said, we water our garden with well water, and it's from the same well pump we use to pump water into our home. So that's a lot of stress to be putting onto one well pump. We can easily pump over 300 gallons of water a day, including usage in our home and then out in the garden during a drought season. And trying to keep up with that when the water table's dropping and there's sediment gunking up your supply lines is a horrific nightmare of a challenge. We will spend hours early in the morning before the sun is even up watering, and then doing that same process sometimes as late as 9 at night to try to get the soil to hold onto that water as long as possible. Now in previous videos I talked about how our soils are heavy clay. It actually turns out we have a mix on our property. There are some low areas that are heavy clay, and then there are other areas that actually lean more towards the sandy side. But both areas are shallow and do not hold on to water, or if it does hold on to the water, it just sits stagnant on top of like the clay soils. So with sandy soils, there's not a lot of organic matter, and trying to get it to hold on to that water is such a challenge. So yeah, drought is heavy on my mind this fall as we look to the experiences and challenges we had this year and what we anticipate being a challenge next year. If the predictions are any indicator, we are not getting away from drought conditions anytime soon. So we are trying to use this time in October and November to prepare for the next growing season. And I wanted to share with you how I'm doing that. I'm hoping that this might also be helpful for you and help you seize the opportunity now, because a lot of this stuff is time sensitive, and the sooner you can get started, the more success you're going to have with your garden next year, hopefully. So our garden is kind of a pragmatic blend of tilling, which we use to break ground to get our garden started, and then we moved on to no-dig methods, where after making our mounds of tilled earth, we piled up organic matter on top of the soil, everything from pine needles to wood chips, grass clippings, straw, raked leaves, even sawdust, all to varying degrees of success. Just a little side note, I do not use sawdust as a mulch layer directly in my beds anymore. Even just sitting on top of the soil, it sucked up too much nitrogen, but I do find it incredibly useful in between rows. So don't get me wrong, no dig works and it's really great for soil health. It just takes a very, very long time to really change the structure of the soil depending on where you live. So high winds in my area blow mulch away from our mounds, and I'm always short on the amount of organic matter I need to cover a half-acre garden. Now, I could easily wait around 5 years and I would see significant improvements to our sandy soils by using this method. I just don't have that kind of time. We need our gardens to produce food now for so many reasons. Feeding ourselves, sharing with our church community, and it just doesn't make sense to put in so much time and effort only to have a failing garden crop next year. So I'm trying something different. So this new method is meant to start off new beds the right way, and that involves building a foundation of heavy organic matter to complement whatever we decide to lay down on the top layer of soil. This to me feels a lot like the hugelkultur method, but simplified. Let me break it down for you. So first, I have some garden rows that are 2 seasons old. We first broke ground and disturbed the soils in 2024 by tilling in late summer. Then we dug mounds and covered those mounds with buckwheat to help the top of the mounds hold their shape and add organic matter. Then this year we cover cropped with oats and basically let it go. So now they're nice and weedy. But what I discovered this year with the drought is that if I dig down into the beds, they are bone dry as much as 8 inches down into the soil. What little organic matter is present is on top of the soil, and honestly, it just shrivels up and blows away like it's nothing. This area is also the hardest place in my garden to water, as it's more than 150 feet from our water hookups, and very much near the limit our hoses will stretch and still maintain water pressure. So it's kind of the most neglected area when it comes to watering. So the very first thing that I did was remove the top layer of weeds and grasses, and then I collected the plant matter in buckets for my chickens to scratch at. They love buckets of weeds. Next, I used the broad fork and the garden rake to push the top layer of soil to the side, creating about a 6-inch pit where the raised row was. Next, I added a layer of leaves, as much as I could pack down. Then finally, I drew the topsoil back over the leaves, recreating the mound, but now I know with certainty that there is a strong foundation of organic matter at least 4 inches beneath that topsoil. Burying the leaves or mixing leaves directly into the soil and its benefits is subject to debate and highly dependent on soil conditions. Freshly mixed in the spring, dried leaves can take up valuable nitrogen and keep it from getting to your plants. Do the same process in autumn, and the leaves have a chance to decompose naturally for a few months, be eaten by worms, and you can worry less about the nitrogen sapping. So I'm mixing leaves in that are already wet from a recent rain. However, if your leaves are dry, I highly recommend you water them down heavily before covering, as this will help kickstart the decomposition process. So my hope is that by creating this foundation of organic matter, we are also creating a sponge that will help retain water deep within the soil and in a place where evaporation by sun and wind cannot reach. This foundation can be life-saving for plants in the middle of a drought when surface waters are not available. Partnered with a top layer of mulch, and you will have rich, deep soils that are resilient against dry weather and attract beneficial microbes. So during the last few really hot summers, my husband and I really wanted a way to soak to cool off. And we have been wanting a hot tub for a really long time, but we just can't afford, a $5,000 hot tub or all of the maintenance that goes into an electric hot tub plus the electric bill. So we decided on a hillbilly hot tub. We've already taken off the hookups for the wood stove, but we were really debating getting this because it was either we purchase this, I usually think of it as a cattle waterer. For some reason I can't remember what it's actually called off the top of my head right now. We were originally going to either get a hot tub or we were going to invest in some water reservoirs. And then I got to thinking, why couldn't this double as a water reservoir? It holds about 300 gallons. It is nicely situated right at the top of this hill. So we fill this up. We don't use any chemicals in it. It's just our well water. And either we'll soak in it cool to cool down, or we'll heat it up and use it as a hot tub. And then when we're done, usually we get 3 or 4 uses out of it before it starts looking like bath water. But then I can hook a hose up to this and drain all of that water out into the garden. So we're just trying to double up on certain things that we use. If there is something that requires a lot of water, think like gray water systems. Like, how can you use the water that you're already using and put that back into your garden? So if you're interested in watching more videos that focus on cold climate permaculture, talking like zones 5 and above or cold hardiness, feel free to check out my other videos. Those will be linked above. And I go over a lot of the different materials you can source for free to use in your garden as mulches or as fertilizers. So if that's something that interests you, some cost-effective ways to combat drought and feed your garden, check this out. That's all I really have for today. I hope some of this information was helpful. I'm really looking forward to seeing how well this new method works. Hoping it will help kickstart some of these new raised beds that I'll be planting some peas into next year. And yeah, only time will tell. Thank you so much for stopping by, and I will see you very soon in the next video. Bye.